My girlfriend Selena insists her guy best friend Todd only sees her as batshit crazy and just a friend, yet he's sending her suggestive messages and crashing at her place. I'm not ready to play second fiddle, especially with a pre-planned trip to the UK looming. Can this work? I apologize in advance. This is very long, but I tried to include all the details because I know how Reddit tends to be, with people asking clarifying questions that nobody ever sees the answers to in the comments. So here is every detail. For context, I am a 26-year-old female who has been dating this girl, whom we will call Selena, for over 6 months. We are not officially in a girlfriend-girlfriend relationship because 1. This is my first queer venture, 2. She has never been in a relationship before, and 3. We both have a lot happening in our lives with work, friends, medical issues, etc. However, we have been doing well and have had a serious conversation about how we are definitely working towards a relationship, but we are both taking it slow to avoid overwhelming each other. Selena has this male friend, Todd. Todd is one of the most unconventional and unattractive-looking men I have ever seen. Keep in mind, I am a bisexual woman, so I say this as someone who understands and is attracted to men. I assure you, this point is relevant to my later statements. Selena describes him as her best friend. They are constantly sending each other Snapchat messages, but when she is with me, especially as we have grown closer and more intimate, she hardly messages him while we are together. One of my first signals that something was amiss with Todd was when she showed me a message he sent her in which she apologized for replying late, and he replied, "Oh, I figured it was because you never respond when you are with your homegirl." He and I are both black, so that choice of language immediately raised my suspicions because it sounded almost bitter. Then Selena mentioned that she would have a friend staying over for the weekend, and lo and behold, it was him. She lives with a roommate in a 2-bedroom apartment. She told me that she would give him the bed while she would sleep on the couch. This set off alarm bells for me because I am Caribbean, and culturally, a man sleeping in a woman's bed is inappropriate, not to mention he should have offered to sleep on the couch in my opinion. So all of this felt odd to me, but I attributed it to the fact that different people have varying levels of closeness with friends. I assumed she had been friends with him for many years because he is not a college friend like her roommate is. On the day after the first night he slept over, I was out with a friend when Selena sent me a picture of him in her pajamas, saying he forgot his pajamas for the weekend, so she had to lend him her pajama pants and shirt. I find it extremely odd that a man would forget his pajamas when they had been planning this stay for weeks. I also discovered that he only lives an hour and a half away from her. Why have a weekend-long sleepover? At this point, my friend, who was with me, chimed in that the entire situation seemed weird and uncomfortable and overstepped boundaries. But I was justifying it by saying that Selena had never been in a relationship before. She had only experienced casual encounters, so she might not be accustomed to modifying her behavior when dating someone. Additionally, since Selena and I are not officially a couple yet, I felt it was not my place to question a long-standing friendship. Fast forward to the next evening when she came to sleep over. While we were driving to a store, she spoke about her weekend with her friend Todd, and I asked how they met. Selena revealed that they had met on Hinge 2 years ago. He liked her first and she was just passing time, so she matched back, but they quickly realized they would be better off as friends. She friend-zoned him first, saying he would not be interested in her because he thought she was insane. I remained silent for a moment before responding that I was judging her choice of men because I wondered why she would even match with someone who looks like him. I recognized that I might sound shallow, and perhaps I am, but he appeared disheveled and like one of those men who does not maintain personal hygiene and asks women for hugs, complaining about how nice guys finish last. It became somewhat awkward, which she noticed, so she continued adding that she would never be interested, etc. The following night, during another conversation, I brought it up again. I explained that I was trying to assess our compatibility regarding boundaries and other aspects, as I believe a boundary is something personal and not something you dictate to your partner. It appears that Selena has really lax boundaries with her friends and the people around her, and I do not want to ask her to change if she does not see an issue. That would imply it would not work for me. I used the situation with Todd as an example because I explained that, given how they met, I find the idea of him sleeping over to be inappropriate and not something I am confident I could accept. She attempted to reassure me further by explaining that she had slept over at his apartment before when they were attending an anime convention early the next morning near his place. I found that to be quite different because there was an activity involved, making it easier logistically, while this situation felt like just spending the weekend lounging around together, which felt exceptionally intimate. Selena also clarified that when they first matched, they were talking about anime, and when they eventually met, she made it clear that they were just hanging out, not on a date. Therefore, there were no expectations. She continued that they hung out about 5 times before he noted that it seemed to give off friendship vibes. She excitedly agreed, and since then they have remained friends. I replied saying that while he may be attracted to her, she set the boundary, but that does not mean he would stop being attracted to her. She acknowledged that she understood because his previous love interest had also expressed concerns, but maintained that it was purely platonic and that he even flinches away when they accidentally touch. He thinks she is insane and would never want to be with her. I responded with something she had told me before. I said, "But didn't you mention that he has issues and would sleep with anything with a pulse that consents? Therefore, the only reason he is not pursuing her is that she is not interested, not because he is uninterested. If she wanted to, he would definitely sleep with her, and that does not constitute a true friendship. It is a man biding his time." Selena replied that he is complicated and has issues. She assured me that she understood my perspective. We then returned to discussing another situation about boundaries with her female roommate, which was another example I provided. The conversation ended with me stating that she might feel that my expectations of what is and isn't acceptable in a relationship seem overbearing to her, given her current boundaries, or lack thereof with friends and her inexperience with dating. I felt she might always be meeting me where I am because I will not compromise on certain key issues, and am also much stricter than she is about what I do and do not allow. Therefore, she may feel constrained or controlled, which is the opposite of my intention. Selena explained that if I brought something up that bothered me, she would respect it and discuss it to see how we could potentially reach an agreement. I sensed it was an ambiguous answer that conveyed we could talk about it, but I would continue to express my perspective, making it unlikely that I would change. My best friend interpreted it differently and thought it meant she was open to compromise. I also have a male best friend, and not only would I not behave like she does, but he would also never permit it. It would be extremely uncomfortable for both of us, and I even called him to share about the situation, and he agrees it seems odd. Both my best friend and I agree that Selena's relationship with Todd crosses boundaries. He clearly still has feelings for her, as demonstrated by him forgetting his pajamas, sleeping in her bed, and the suspicious manner in which he noted she never responds when she is with me. Additionally, Selena is genuinely more attractive and in a better position in life than he is, making her a very appealing option for him. He is incredibly peculiar, and my friend also pointed out that men like him can be particularly intimidating, as they may turn dangerous at any moment. However, on Selena's end, she insists that he sees her only as a friend, as evidenced by his dating other women. I am hesitant to push the issue too hard, but it does not sit well with me. I know that if we reach the official stage, I will at the very least set the boundary that I am not comfortable with sleepovers between them and would not continue in a relationship with her if she wants to maintain that arrangement. Simultaneously, I worry that if I express this, it might come across as manipulative. Part of me thinks this should be obvious, but the other part recognizes that she is not very observant or discerning in general and has never been in a relationship before. She has always acted freely without considering someone else's feelings, so perhaps she deserves the opportunity to evolve into a more thoughtful version of herself within a relationship. Yet, I think if she were genuinely invested in me, this would be an issue of basic respect. I am also aware that she genuinely would not be bothered if the roles were reversed. I really like her, and aside from this issue and one other with her roommate, things have been wonderful. Another aspect is that I tend to be very logical and do not experience jealousy. Rather, I simply feel discomfort when I sense someone is straying or engaging in behaviors that infringe upon my boundaries regarding monogamy. I like her more than I have liked the majority of people I have dated in the past, and I do not want to reach a point where I shut off my feelings for her. We have become quite intimate, not just sexually. She makes me feel so comfortable and at ease. Fast forward 2 weeks. He ended up sending her TikTok and Instagram messages expressing sentiments such as he did not want to be friend-zoned, that he wanted to engage in sexual activity, and that he performs oral sex until his jaw hurts, alongside compliments like calling her beautiful. All of this occurred after the sleepover. These messages were ones I noticed when she was showing me funny messages with all her friends on her phone. She seemed quite reluctant to review his thread, so I pushed ahead because my intuition felt uneasy. It also turned out they had slept in the same bed, which I genuinely do not believe was at her request, but whatever. So yes, I was completely correct about my suspicions. It became apparent that he had also spoken poorly of me to her, calling me a nerd or something, and he was sending her suggestive messages. We discussed this in depth, and initially she considered ensuring that they slept in separate spaces during sleepovers, but after I emphasized that it was a non-negotiable for me, we agreed that there would be no sleepovers at all, and she would need to make him stop sending her suggestive texts. They would take a 2-week break to solidify the new boundaries. She has not yet informed me how that conversation transpired, as she wants 2 weeks to decompress before revisiting the topic. I honestly suspect he did not respond well because if it had gone positively, she would likely have shared that easily. She plans to update me in a couple of weeks. We also made our relationship official as this was our only concern. I am relieved that she listened to me, as this is my primary issue, and I genuinely believe we could make it long-term. But I have lingering doubts about the fact that it took her so long to recognize my perspective and that her initial solution was so lenient. They also have a pre-planned trip to the United Kingdom for 2 weeks, which stresses me out, because now it seems more reasonable that his escalating behavior was likely intended to make a move on her during the trip. But she even invited me to join them. This could serve two purposes. One, allowing me to observe their dynamic firsthand. Who knows, maybe he will learn to respect boundaries and will no longer make me feel uncomfortable. And two, demonstrating that she genuinely wants to make it clear that she has no interest in him or his potential advances. But my intuition tells me this issue will not dissipate, especially with how firmly she kept insisting that he is harmless and did not mean it that way, even after she agreed to reset boundaries. What should my next steps be? Story 2. My boyfriend controlled who I could talk to. After my best friend died, I craved connection. When I shared my pain with a guy classmate, I thought it was innocent. But now I'm tortured by guilt and he thinks I cheated. Did I cross a line I didn't see? It began during my time in Brazil with my boyfriend 2 summers ago when my best friend from childhood tragically passed away in an accident. This hit me very hard. I felt immense sadness and guilt because I had not communicated with him or responded to his texts for the previous 3 months, as my boyfriend had told me I was not permitted to talk to any other men, including my old friends. I returned from Brazil for the funeral, and my boyfriend was upset that I had left as his family lived in Brazil and I was supposed to be there with them. However, I needed to go. I felt like my boyfriend did not fully understand the depth of my grief over losing my friend, and I experienced profound loneliness and pain during that time. My boyfriend and I had numerous arguments while he was in Brazil and I was at home. I expressed to him that I felt he did not care for me, among other things. He mentioned that he was trying to enjoy his time with his family, which I understood as he rarely got to see them. Nonetheless, this led to a lot of tension, and amidst my emotional turmoil, I ended up threatening to break up. We often made threats like this, but never seriously. This time, he surprisingly agreed. I told him that I was just upset and believed, as usual, we would get through it. However, this time felt different. He called me and basically said he was uncertain about how our relationship could work and expressed his desire for his future children to be with his family in Brazil someday. This devastated me. I had never experienced such anguish. I could not eat, lost 15 pounds, and found it difficult to sleep. It was truly the lowest point I had reached, consumed by the fear of losing him. Eventually, we resolved our issues, but my fear lingered. Before this episode, I had expected us to get engaged that summer. I thought he was going to propose. Then came his suggestion of a breakup. Although he reassured me that he did not want that, I had doubts for the first time about whether he truly wanted me. When he returned to the United States, everything felt off. I was filled with anxiety over the possibility of him leaving me, and I was also disheartened that we were not yet engaged. Once we went back to our respective colleges, things remained awkward. I felt insecure about knowing he wanted me, which increased my anxiety. I worried that I was annoying him with my feelings. Furthermore, this was my senior year in college and my surroundings had changed significantly. My best friend and former roommate moved off campus and I seldom saw her. My sister, who was living with me, was dating someone on campus and spent most of her time with him. Many of my close friends had graduated. I felt incredibly alone. I remember eating by myself in my dorm every day, feeling like a social outcast, as if there was something wrong with me. The loss of my best friend in the car accident compounded my sense of isolation. I felt like I had no one to hang out with. While I had my boyfriend to text and call, I lacked companionship on campus. I have always struggled with concerns about how others perceive me. I did not want to be seen as a girl without a social circle or friends. Consequently, I decided to try to make new friends. I prayed to God for assistance in forming friendships, but still nothing happened. All the girls on campus seemed to have their own social circles already established. As a senior, I was no longer viewed as someone in need of joining small groups to make friends. I remember making a strong effort to initiate conversations, but nothing seemed to take hold. I am a relatively quiet person who tends to rely on others to engage with me first, so it felt strange to pursue friendships actively. One day, while walking to class, a guy I had seen before introduced himself. He simply asked for my name and major typical icebreaker questions. Later that day, I noticed he had added me on Instagram and I accepted it, finding it intriguing. This may sound peculiar, but I have often assumed that men who add me on social media may have a crush. However, considering I attended a Christian college, I thought perhaps he was just being friendly. Time passed, and one day I posted an Instagram story asking which Starbucks drink was better, inviting people to vote. He commented that neither was good, asserting Dunkin' was better. I was pleased he paid attention to me and recognized me, which sparked a conversation where I insisted Starbucks was superior. He mentioned he had never tried Starbucks, so I suggested we go together so he could experience how much better it was than Duncan. I felt excited, believing this was my chance to make a friend. I have always found it easier to make friends with men than with women. Men seem more straightforward in wanting to be friends if they find someone attractive. I assumed this scenario was similar, thinking he probably had a crush on me. However, I found it curious since my Instagram featured numerous pictures of my boyfriend and me, including intimate ones. I was uncertain about his intentions, given that he clearly saw I was in a relationship. The following day, I was heading home for the weekend, so I deleted our messages and chose not to text him since I did not want my boyfriend to become upset or feel betrayed. My boyfriend had previously reacted negatively to any communication I had with other men, even remotely. When I returned after the weekend, I texted the guy again and he casually inquired about my weekend. I was thrilled at the prospect of having a friend on campus to hang out with. I hoped he would want to be that friend. During our conversation, he asked what I was up to and I replied that I was bored and studying. He suggested studying together and I readily agreed. I remember getting ready to meet him, applying some makeup because I wanted to make a good impression and not seem unattractive. When we met, we studied together and he inquired about my summer. I shared with him how difficult it was due to losing my best friend, and then I explained how my relationship with my boyfriend added to the challenges. I suspect I revealed this information partly because it was true, partly to express my commitment to my boyfriend, and perhaps subconsciously, I hoped it would encourage him to want to be my friend since he might think I was having issues in my relationship. I was uncertain whether he liked me in a romantic way, but I was aware from past experiences that some of my male friends had secretly harbored feelings for me in hopes of strengthening our friendships. I wanted to establish a friendship, even if it was with a guy who might be developing a crush, because at least I would have a friend. I convinced myself that it was acceptable as long as I did not reciprocate those feelings. He then expressed his sympathy about my loss, and I found myself unintentionally crying as talking about it stirred deep emotions. I felt foolish for being vulnerable, but discussing that summer brought back many painful memories. He offered a hug, likely out of compassion for my distress. Later, I texted him to apologize for breaking down in front of him so early in our acquaintance. He reassured me that it was fine and that he was glad to listen. Days later, I crossed paths with him again while getting coffee on campus. I felt joyful to have someone to share a coffee experience with. We engaged in casual conversation and I mentioned a female friend he could talk to. He shared details about his family and I asked about his celebrity crushes, hoping to convince him to be interested in my friend. When he inquired about my preferences, I told him a few, wondering if he was asking to gauge his interest in me. I was careful not to flirt during this interaction. Eventually, I asked if he wanted to grab Starbucks after class. He agreed and offered to pick me up. On the way, he shared more about himself, including where he was from. He then asked about my relationship with my boyfriend. I opened up about some concerns I had, fully aware that discussing this might give him false hope that I would break up with my boyfriend. However, I was committed to my boyfriend and did not believe I was doing anything wrong by sharing my feelings. I appreciated having someone to listen and felt cared for. During our conversations, I made sure to follow up with affirmations of my love for my boyfriend, as these concerns were genuinely significant to me. Although I exaggerated my distress to him somewhat, my commitment to marrying my boyfriend was unwavering. I remember continuing to mention my girlfriend to show that I was attempting to set him up. I gauged his reaction, looking for hints that he might prefer me over her, but he stated he liked her. I felt concerned that if they were to date, I would once again find myself isolated, similar to how I felt when my sister spent all her time with her boyfriend. This saddened me because I did not want to lose another potential friend. He paid for my coffee, which felt a bit strange, but I remembered that an old male friend had done the same before. I spilled some coffee on my hand, and he helped clean it off with his finger, which struck me as unusual but also caring, demonstrating the human connection I longed for. I never found him attractive. He was, in fact, the opposite of my type. He also lent me his jacket because it was cold, but I hesitated to wear it, feeling it was inappropriate given my relationship with my boyfriend. Instead, I placed it on my hands in the car to avoid seeming rude. I also attempted to connect him with another friend and envisioned a scenario where he and my boyfriend could eventually meet. However, I was uncertain how to facilitate that without my boyfriend growing alarmed at my relationship with a male friend. There was a significant moment when we were texting, and I shared the softball roster since I played on the team and asked him which girl he would be interested in. He replied that none of them were his type, which left me pondering if he genuinely did not find me attractive. Most of my male friends probably would have expressed interest in one of them while acknowledging my relationship. I initially felt down, questioning my appeal, but quickly reassured myself by dismissing any attraction to him. I later disclosed everything to my boyfriend, feeling the need to be honest about the friendship. After looking online about whether having a male friend was appropriate, I found advice condemning secrecy in such situations, prompting me to confess to my boyfriend. I had no intention of wronging him, I simply craved companionship during that time. Reflecting on my interactions, I realized I would never date this friend, but I appreciated having someone to support me. I found him physically unattractive, and in retrospect, I recognized that I did not genuinely care about him as a person. My attention revolved around the fact that he was giving me some attention. Once I told my boyfriend, I cut ties with this guy immediately. Surprisingly, I did not mind losing that friendship. It did not pain me to distance myself from him. Nevertheless, I have been engulfed in fear since this incident, worrying constantly about whether what I did crossed the line into cheating. In that moment, I had not perceived my actions as crossing boundaries, as I thought I was upholding them. Now I have faced a year filled with anxiety, waking up every day consumed by doubts about my fidelity, and have found myself obsessively reflecting on this fear.